No, I'm ready.
Great. All right. So today is February 18th, 2021. I'm here with drag racing legend and 2012 Hall of Fame inductee, Ed Pink. And we are talking with him today here in preparation for an upcoming exhibit. They wore two helmets. And we'll be talking about Mr. Pink's service in the Korean War. So, Mr. Pink, when were you born?
Uh, February 10th, 1931.
Oh, okay. So you just had your 90th.
Yes.
Yes, happy belated. Yeah, yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah. Of course, I'm coming up on my 25th on the
Oh
27th.
boy.
So yeah. And where did you grow up?
Pardon me. Where did I grow up?
Mhm.
In California, in Los Angeles. Uh, I was born here, and uh, my family moved back to Omaha, Nebraska, where my mother originated from, and we lived there about 10 years. And then we moved back to California in 1940 and been there ever since.
Okay. So when you were in Nebraska, I understand around that time that, of course, the Dust Bowl, the dust storms would kick up. Did you get any of those, or?
Oh yeah, yeah. In fact, I was born right when the Depression was going. So, my family experienced that, and as I got older, I experienced it also.
Hmm. And what do you remember about those dust storms? I've heard from a few folks who grew up in Kansas and on the plains.
Well, they were terrible, but you got to understand back then, I'm like 7, 8 years old, 6 years old, so 5 years old. So it was just another happening, and it didn't affect me like I was like 17, 18 years old and I had to be working in it and so forth. You know, my parents kept me inside when it was all going on, and my poor father was the one that had to go out and try to earn a living for us.
Wow.
All that. It was a mess.
Mhm. And I've heard from again those, and some of them, were in their teens or so when this happened. It was just, I mean, as black as night in some cases. Did
Yeah,
you
well,
experience that?
they kept us inside, and uh, when the dust storms came, I mean, you couldn't tell the difference between daytime and nighttime.
Wow. Yeah, I can't even imagine. I mean, the closest comparison I have is, I think, probably hurricanes here in Florida. But of course, that's the normal sort of thing. That's
Yeah,
not.
every part of the country's got something. Florida's got the tornadoes and hurricanes and that sort of thing, and in the Midwest, they have the storms with the snow. Out in California, we have earthquakes and the wind so there isn't any perfect place.
Mhm.
Every place has got something.
Right, right. Not quite paradise anywhere, but
No,
eh, could you tell me about your introduction to cars?
well, it was an early age. I got introduced probably when I was 14, 15 years old, and I just love mechanical things, and I love taking stuff apart and learning how it goes back together and learning about the functions of it and so forth. And that was just, that was my hobby. That was my everything. And as I got older, I was deeper and deeper into it. And when I came home from the army, that's what I wanted to do. I just made up my mind that I was going to learn about it and and do it.
Hmm.
I never thought in those early days about getting to the point where I'd get into a Hall of Fame or I'd do records. I mean, this is just something that I love doing, and this is what I wanted to do. And I did a lot of different areas in the automotive field before I finally decided racing engines is what I wanted to do.
Hmm. And what was your first car?
The 1922 Model T Ford.
Wow, so the classic Tin Lizzy, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I understand that early on, you had the chance to work learn from Vic Edelbrock and work with his crew. Um,
Right.
now, I understand that some of the shop's crew, specifically Bobby Meeks and Fran Hernandez, were veterans themselves of World War II. Do you get a sense, or did you get a sense that that might have affected how they worked?
I don't know about that. I was very fortunate. First, uh, I met Lou Baney, and he was the first one that I was really got involved with a professional person. And I went to work for him, and he had a Golden Eagle gas station in South Los Angeles that I worked for, and he had a repair shop in the back, and I worked for him. And he had a car. He ran at the El Mirage Dry Lake, and that was my first job. And through all this, I became I met Vic Brock Sr. and I became very friendly with him and Bobby Meeks and Don Toll and Fran Hernandez. And I was really fortunate in my career that I met all good people that that kind of took me under their wing and helped me grow in the sport. Uh, I very fortunate that I had the best people. I had I had besides Lou Baney, besides Vic Edelbrock and Bobby Meeks and Don Toll and Fran, I had Eddie Meyer. This is over the period of years. I had Eddie Meyer. I had Sonny Meyer. I had Chicky Hiroshima. Uh,
Mhm.
I had some really good people that took care of me and made sure that I got down the straight path that I didn't wander. And it paid off for me. And like I say, that was my Harvard College, is going through school with those people.
Yeah, and I actually was doing some. You mentioned Hiroshima. I did some research on him as well. Yeah, he was with the 442nd, the famous
Right.
Japanese American unit,
Yeah.
field artillery, and he actually, to my knowledge, liberated Dachau concentration camp. Was with them when they went through there. Do you
Yes.
remember him talking about? I mean, I know a lot of these guys were closed mouthed, but do you remember him or others talking about their war service, when you were coming up as a teen under them?
No. No, I don't. Uh, they never talk about. I never. They never did talk about it. I think of all the ones that I was involved with, Bobby Meeks, uh, when he was where he went to work for Edelbrock when he was 14 years old, and when World War II broke out, he went in the Navy, and I believe he was in the Navy for like 4 years. And when he got discharged from the Navy, he went back to Edelbrock, and that's the only job he ever had in his whole life, other than Edelbrock and the Navy.
Wow.
And when he died, he was still at Edelbrock.
I guess
And
that was my understanding, and yeah, he survived. His ship was hit by, I think, two mines during the war. I mean,
yes,
it was
yes,
really,
yeah.
yeah, because
And I think out of all the people I knew, I think Chicky got the worst end of the deal because he also got, because he was Japanese, he got put in an internment camp, and it didn't sour him, it didn't change him. He was still the same Chicky. And when he, and then when he went into the 442nd Infantry unit that he was in, uh, being in the internment camp didn't affect him how he handled his job in the service. And when that was finally over, and he was a free man again, uh, he did a lot of things in the automotive racing industry that a lot of people don't know about. I mean, he was something.
you say, I mean, I'm just reading a bit about him. It was inspiring, and I I mean, quite honestly, I found that a lot of, and I guess Edelbrock was good friends with them. A lot of dry lake racers were Japanese American, and a lot of them end up, most of them end up in internment camps, and some like Hiroshima and a few others end up in the service too. And usually the 442nd. I mean, it's really remarkable.
Right.
Yeah.
And I am the one that has been trying to get Chicky into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So far, we haven't made the grade, but I'm not going to give up.
Oh, don't worry. Yeah. Well, you got friended me over here, so.
Great, thank you.
No, of course. Yeah. No, but I think I would really like to. We have a couple veterans. We want to, I think, kind of rotate in and out. Still kind of getting a feel for it, but maybe he might very well be one. I'll certainly put in my 2 cents for it. So how did you react, Mr. Pink, when you received your draft notice?
Well, I knew it was coming. It was something that I knew I needed to do, and I'm not a fan of all these wars because all these wars are usually generated by the politicians, and the politicians never go to war. They just sit in their desks and dream up what's the next thing they can screw up. And but I went and I went in the army, and I knew that I got drafted not to be sent to Hawaii or Germany or England or something like that. I knew I was drafted. In my mind, I knew I was drafted to go to Korea. And when I went up to Fort Ord, first I went through 8 weeks of basic training. Then after 8 weeks, they take some people and they move them into heavy equipment and all different aspects of the service. And I got my second 8 weeks was the infantry. So I knew that they weren't getting me ready to go to China. They were getting me ready to go to Korea. And when I got done with the 16 weeks of basic training, on the bulletin board at the main office there for the group, they had a whole list of where everybody was going. And when I looked through the list, it said Korea, which it didn't surprise me. I knew in my own mind that the reason I got drafted was to go to Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out right. So, and I went to Korea, and the first night I went to Japan first on a boat. And when I got to Japan, the first thing they did is they take all your clothes away and they issue the fatigues and so forth you're going to wear in Korea. And they issued you a steel helmet and a belt that holds all the ammunition and a rifle. And then you get on another boat that takes you to Korea. And where we landed was on Incheon Harbor. And I remember we went to a campground in that area, and you're there about a day or so, and then your orders come out what division you're going to, and then the trucks take you to that division. Then when you get there, you look on the bulletin boards, and it tells you where you're going from next. So then it said I was going to 14th Infantry Regiment. So then they take you, load you in trucks again, and they take you to the battalion you're going to be in. And then from the battalion, they take you to the company you're going to be in. And I remember when I got to the company the first night in Korea, it was probably, I don't know, about 9, 10 o'clock. They called me and they said, you're going to be on guard duty, and your guard duty is going to be from 2 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the morning. And I remember they sent me, they put me off in a very desolate place. And I was going to be on guard duty there, and it was a big tent. And they told me that I was going to be guard at GRS. I had no idea what GRS was. So I went inside the tent at probably about 3 o'clock in the morning because I was the only one in that one spot, just marching, just walking back and forth with my rifle. And I couldn't stand it any longer. I had to see what was in the tent. And when I went inside the tent, all it was American soldiers dead, laying in body bags. And what the GRS stood for was Graves Registered Service, which I didn't know that at the time. And that really put a shock in me, made me realize, because up till then, I just knew about all this stuff, but hadn't seen it with my own eyes. But I'll never forget that, going in that tent and looking and seeing all these soldiers in body bags. And there was a lot of them, a lot, maybe 20 or 30 of them, and they're laying on the ground. And yeah. So that was my first experience in Korea.
Wow. I mean, the first experience on the line. And yeah, I mean, I've talked to a lot of veterans who, they have that moment when it's real, when they realize, oh, we're in the war. And
That's
yeah,
when you really realize that this is real.
and not to backtrack too much here, but do you have? I guess by the sound of it, maybe not. But do you have any plans to go into the service? Like any thoughts prior to actually being drafted, or was it not really, kind of something you were?
I didn't want to go in. No. If I listed 4 things that I wanted to do, that would be number 4.
Mm-hmm.
No, that isn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And so, when you went to Fort Ord for basic training, I mean, did you have any chance to? Because usually, I know, right, in some cases, that was a time when if there was any kind of skills you had, if I mean, of course, the Army needed infantrymen, but um, they would maybe try and see if they could put you into or give some training of some sort that applied your skills. Did you get to practice with anything mechanical while you were there?
No.
No.
No, one thing I found that I never understood is if a guy was a truck driver, they put him in cooking school, and a cook, they made a truck driver. And yeah, and I guess the reasoning for that is they didn't want you to come in with any preconceived ideas. They wanted to teach you their way, and they didn't want anything to interfere with that. So, being I had a mechanical background to a point, and that I loved automobile and repair and that sort of thing, they did not put me in the motor pool or something like that.
Right. One would think a motor pool or quartermaster engineer.
Yeah.
But the infinite wisdom of the U.S. Army. So then you headed to Korea in, you said, the winter of '52, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it was it was in winter of '52. It was like November, I think, November, October, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And right, so in the middle of the stalemate. I mean, this is right in the
But yeah, the war was going on. Yeah. No.
And what was the furthest you reckon you'd been from home prior to your service in the Army?
Pardon me.
What do you think was the furthest you had been from home before your service in the Army?
Farthest I'd been from home, maybe 200 or 300 miles.
Mhm. Wow. And now you were going across the world
Yeah.
into a war zone.
Yeah, and I remember when I got on the ship in up in San Francisco, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it took 2 weeks for the troop ship to get to Japan, and I was seasick for 2 weeks.
Did you guys hit any storms? Because I know that there were some cases that during typhoon season, the ships would kind of catch a bit of that.
I don't remember any heavy typhoon or anything like that. I know we got into some heavy seas a few times.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember being seasick for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I don't have those kind of legs, so yeah, I think I would be too. Um, so then again, like you said, you were assigned to Able Company of the 14th Infantry, 25th Division.
Yeah, I don't remember what battalion that was. It's been so long ago.
Mhm. Let's see, and then again, you were joining as a replacement because, of course, they had already been in Korea for some time. I assume.
Yeah, we were replacements.
And I've heard that replacements had a hard time, really going into units with veterans. Did you find that that was your experience in Korea?
No, uh, no, I don't remember anything like that. I remember, uh, no, and they were glad to see us. They were glad to see us because we were replacing people who either got shot, wounded, or killed, or their time was up and they got to rotate and go home. Because at the time, uh, if you were an infantryman, what we call a frontline soldier, uh, you only had to go. You went 9 months, and then you'd go home. And yeah, and unfortunately, like I told you, I they made a big after the truce was signed, and they could have lights out and so forth. Because before that, there was no lights any place, and the trucks had no lights, and the people the tents, if you could close them up completely, they would allow a light. But if it wasn't completely sealed, they wouldn't allow any lights. So, like I had told you, uh, after the truce was signed and the armistice was in effect, uh, they were going to put this big area for movies for the soldiers, and they had nobody do the wiring and do it. And they asked if anybody had any experience. Well, like a dummy, I put my hand up and said, "Yeah, I know that kind of stuff." So they said, "Okay, fine." So they did whatever I wanted done. They made the area and they put all the uh, wooden seats in for the guys to watch the movies and so forth. But it needed wiring to wire everything up with the lights and so forth. So I was able to get a 6 generator. It's a generator with an engine that runs a generator that produces the power. So I procured one of those and got it all set up for them. I basically it was my hot rod background that helped me do all this, and I had recruited some guys to help me, and we did all the wiring into the tents, into the uh, machine, the machine for showing the movies and so forth. And it was cool, But then when it got time for me to go home, they wouldn't let me because there had to be somebody there to maintain this because there's always something going wrong, you know. And I remember I ended up being there 15 months before they finally found somebody for my replacement.
It basically doubled the length of your tour.
Pretty much, yeah, yeah. And then
And
when I got home, uh, I only had a few more months to go till my time was up. So they discharged me then. They rather than have me go through another deal all over again someplace.
oh, I see. Yeah. Now, I understand that the division, the 25th, was mostly around the Punch Bowl at this time, like Heartbreak Ridge and all that
Yeah.
rugged terrain. How would you describe the area where you were serving, just to kind of help us visualize?
Well, it was just hills with brush and were any trees to speak of. It was all brush and and remember that we used to have one battalion would be on the front lines, and then there'd be another battalion that would be in backing them up in case the Koreans got through the main line. There's another group back there to stop them, and then the third group would be on what they call an R&R, but they wouldn't be gone any places. They'd be back a ways, just on rest and recuperation. And they would last so long, and then they'd take the people that were in reserve would then move up to the front line, and the front line would go back in the rest area for a certain amount of time. And that's how they revolved those three. So they always had main line, the backup, and then the reserve. So if the enemy did break through, they're just not going to be break through into wide open spaces and nothing there to counteract them. And I remember one time we were going to, I don't remember where we were going. It was, over there, one place was, I mean, they all looked the same. Never, any difference. But I remember one thing that stands out in my memory today is that there was one place that we were moving to, and I don't remember whether we were going to Heartbreak Ridge or coming away from Heartbreak Ridge, going someplace else. They wouldn't, when you're on the front lines, they wouldn't leave you there very long. You might be there 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, and then they'd move you someplace else. They didn't want the enemy to get too used to your habits, the way you were. They wanted to change it all the time. And I remember we were moving, and all of our badges and insignias on our uniforms, they had us remove them. They, on all the bumpers of the trucks, they had gunny sacks over the bumpers where all the numbers of the organization was, so you couldn't see anything. Nobody could have any sergeant stripes or corporal stripes or anything on their arms. The officers couldn't have any lieutenant bars or captain bars. I mean, they had it where they felt that we were as incognito as we could be. And we moved into the new place, and we got all settled all of a sudden over the loudspeakers, because they had loudspeakers that we used and the Koreans used. And I remember over the loudspeakers, they said, "Welcome, 14th Infantry Regiment. Here we've gone through all the secrecy to make the move," and the Koreans knew we were doing it. And that really sent a shudder down your spine. With the amount of effort they had us go through to be completely concealed, and everything concealed, so nobody would know what outfit we're in, what anything. And to have them over the loudspeaker say, "Welcome, 14th Infantry Regiment. You don't screw with us, and we won't screw with you." I'll never forget that.
Wow.
That was scary. It was like they knew everything we were doing.
Mm-hmm. Right. All it kind of makes me think of there's, I guess, unfortunately, World War II gets so much attention. It's what I guess stands out to most people, but like Axis Sally, right?
Yeah.
We're reporting over the radio, and they had exact names and units and movement, and yeah.
That's right.
And you're 21, 22 at this time.
21.
21, yeah. As a kid. Now, could you tell me, Mr. Pink, as much as you're comfortable with it, about your first time in combat?
Oh, my what?
Your first time in combat, like active combat.
I was very fortunate. If I shot somebody, I don't know it, and I was never shot. I know that was lucky, you know. There were, you know, I was lucky, you know. I was one of the guys that escaped the whole thing. You know, I was there, got to see it, got to see guys that were killed, got to see guys that were wounded bad. Uh, but and I got to see some guys break down mentally. But I avoided all that. You know, I guess I'm just lucky. You know, just lucky.
Mhm. And the first time, I mean, I guess you know, you had like that first night um, that you mentioned about, but the first time you were really in, you know, in it, you know, and being shot at, were you scared?
No, no. Uh, the only time that I was scared was the first night there when I was doing the guard duty.
Hmm.
You know, in fact, you know, and as we went, as I was there for a while, and kind of had the feel for things, and kind of, I'd say, I was one of them, you know, because I had some experience. Now, I remember that Bolton came out that when we did guard duty, we couldn't have any ammunition in our weapon. And I'm thinking, that no way. So, and they said, if we catch you with ammunition in your weapon when you're standing guard duty, you're going to be court-martialed. And I said, screw it, no way. When I stood guard duty, I had a clip in my rifle, but I
Yeah,
never got caught with it.
right. Yeah, didn't have to worry about whether to make good on that threat of a court martial.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how would you describe your living conditions in Korea?
Uh, they were terrible, you know. Once in a while, I had the luxury of having a tent, a small tent that I get into. Uh, but there were times when we lived in a foxhole, and there were times when it rained, and the foxhole got about a foot deep in water. Yeah, so yeah.
Mhm.
And I remember in the winter times it was cold and it snowed, and the boots that they gave us to wear, they were called Mickey Mouse boots, and they did keep our feet warm.
Wow. And now there's the famous image, of course, it's I mean, quite literally you know, memorialized at the Korean War Memorial in DC, but of the you know, the Army or Marines, you know, I think it's supposed to represent, you know, both. But with the ponchos, you know, the long ponchos that were issued, did you have those in the field?
Yeah, I had a poncho.
Did it work at least halfway decent, or was it
No,
just
it worked. Yeah, no, you know, but the thing is this, that when you're out in the cold and the snow for hours at a time, you know, after a while you get cold.
right? Yeah, after so long, yeah, it's not going to cut it.
But
Um,
you know, it is what it is, and you're there, and you had to make the best of things, which we did.
and did you carry any personal items on you? You know, like anything, you know, just like any keepsakes or that sort of thing with your equipment?
What?
Did you carry any personal items like keepsakes with your equipment, your regular issued equipment?
No, no. The one thing that I did do later on, uh, when I became a sergeant,
Hmm.
and then I got to trade in my M1 rifle for an M2 carbine. And I remember the there was a guy I became friendly with in the motor pool, and they had a welder. And I took two of my magazines. They held 15 bullets in each one, and I welded them together so that I could snap it in the rifle. There's 15, and then I could take it out and turn it upside down, snap it back in. So I ended up with 30 rounds in it.
I guess.
So I wasn't the inventor. That other guys told me about what they did, so I did the same thing.
Yeah, because I've seen the famous, and you almost think of it more, I think, in like the Vietnam War, take the magazines, but yours is actually, they welded. That was not coming apart at all.
Yeah, no, I don't remember whether it was welded or brazed, but they were welded together end per end. So you plug it in, and then when you use all those, you take it out and turn it upside down, and plug it back in the other way.
And you made sergeant while in Korea?
Yes,
And was that the highest rank you achieved? Was buck sergeant?
yes.
Okay. So, and what did you do to pass the time when you weren't in combat?
We drank booze. Usually what would happen, somebody would get a bottle of Seagrams, and we'd sit around. There'd be like 6 or 7, 8 of us, and just pass the bottle around until it was empty. But I think the whiskey that we're able to get over there was probably 50 proof rather than 80 or 90 proof like you can buy. Because I remember we drank 2 bottles of it and we're dead sober. But it's very possible that where we're at kept us sober.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder. Yeah, kind of like just being high up, or yeah. But now, did you write letters home? And
Yes. Yes. I wasn't married, I didn't have any girlfriend. So I would write letters to my mother and father,
mm-hmm.
and they would write letters to me.
And I imagine you were able to tell them too much. I mean, only what.
I didn't hear that.
Oh, I said I imagine you couldn't tell them too much. Only what the censors allowed, right?
Yeah, no, I didn't tell them too much. In fact, when I got my orders to go to Korea, I didn't tell my parents. I told them I was going to Japan, which wasn't a very smart move, because if I'd have got wounded or killed, that would have been terrible for them. But no, I didn't tell them that I was going to Korea.
Do you think they found out when you were over there, or was it after the fact that they found out you had?
They found out after a while.
Wow, they didn't even know that you were in Korea while.
They thought I was going to Japan.
Wow. Gosh, I mean, right, I guess, like you said, God forbid if anything happened, didn't want to, think that anything let them think anything could happen, but.
Luckily it didn't. So, in fact, when I came home, and when I came home and I went to, I think I was in Camp Stoneman, which is up in San Francisco area. I was there about a day, and they gave me a 10-day furlough. It was almost a 2-week furlough. And then I'd go back, and I remember I couldn't wait for the Greyhound bus to come to take me back to Los Angeles, and I hitchhiked.
Really?
Yeah, all the way home. And when my uncle had a hot dog stand in Los Angeles, which is a very famous one. And I remember I got picked up and driven quite a ways, but the last fellow that stopped to pick me up was a movie actor. I can't think of his name. Rock Hudson.
Oh, Rock Hudson. Yes. Yeah.
That's who picked me up and dropped me off at my uncle's hot dog stand. And then one of the people working with my uncle had him take me home. And I knocked on the door, and my mother came to the door, and she almost fainted when she saw me because she didn't know I was coming.
Wow. And do you remember the conversation you had with Rock?
No, no. We didn't talk that much. It's amazing he picked me up. I had my army uniform on, but I'm out there with my thumb out, hitchhiking, and, and he stopped, picked me up, and I looked at him, and I knew that he looked familiar. And I didn't know who he was until after I got out of the car, and my uncle saw because he dropped me off right in the front of his hot dog stand. My uncle saw it and told me, he said, that was Rock Hudson. And I said, I knew that was a movie star, but I didn't know who it was.
Wow, so he didn't pull do you know who I am sort of thing.
Pardon me?
I said he didn't pull a. Do you know who
No, no.
Huh. That's some nice humility from Rock, huh? Very interesting, yeah. So, and I imagine he probably did pretty well. I would think as a movie star,
What?
he probably had a pretty nice car.
Yeah, I don't remember. It was a nice car. I don't remember whether it was a Cadillac or Chrysler, what it was. I know it was a nice car.
Mhm. So backtracking a little bit here, that's fascinating though. What are some close calls that stand out from your time in Korea? Like any times where you know it was close when it got close to you being wounded.
Closest call that I had was we were on a hill, and we were we got up. It was early in the morning. I don't know, like 5 o'clock, 4:30, something like that. It was dark as the ace of spades, and there's no lights, no flashlights, no lights anyway. It's just dark, and we were going. We were going to meet we were going to go on a patrol. I was one of the guys, and I remember walking down the hill to where we were going to meet. Uh, I I tripped on a 5-gallon Jeep can. You ever seen it? Know what a Jeep can looks like?
Oh yeah, the jerry can, the real famous. Yeah, yeah.
Kind of on the top, it's got a side. It's got this big nut that tightens up the hole. Well, I tripped on that. It was in the pathway or whatever, and I tripped on it, and I went up in the air and did like a front flip and landed on my knee on it. And I'm laying on the ground, and a couple of other soldiers that were coming down noticed me, and they picked me up, and they carried me to the first medical guy. I don't forgot what W you call him. And he looked at me and said, "Well, your kneecaps exploded." So they came with a stretcher and took me to the first aid station. And the medic there at the first aid station looked at it and says, "Nothing we can do." He says, "This is broken. We're going to send you to get fixed." So they carried me in a stretcher for, I don't know, about 100 yards to a Jeep. They loaded me on the Jeep, and I was on a stretcher. And they took me to another place where there was a more of a doctor than a medic. And the doctor looked at my leg and said, "Oh, this thing's exploded. This is really bad. Uh, we're going to get you to the hospital." And they loaded me on. They had the helicopter that looked like a bug. It was
Oh,
just
the famous Iowa, right? I believe it was the MASH helicopter, the one that we all think of when we see at the beginning, like in the opening of MASH.
Yeah, that's it. And they have a bars on the side of it that a stretcher bolts do, and they loaded me on that, and I got a helicopter ride to the next place, and they looked at it and said, "No, this thing is broken. You're gonna have to go to Japan and have it fixed." And they load now, each place I'm going to, I'm going farther and farther behind the line. So as I go farther and farther behind the line, the vehicles they take me in and so forth, they're getting bigger and so forth. So they finally got me to, I was at the big medical center in Busan, and they got me there, and the doctor looked at it and said, because up to this point, they had told me, "You're going home. This is more than we can do here." So next thing they said that they're going to send me to Japan and have my leg taken care of, and then from Japan they're going to send me back to the U.S. So I got to the last place that I would go to in Korea, where they were going to load me up and send me to Japan. And the doctor there said, he says, "Before we send you, we're going to take an X-ray of your leg," which they did. And when the doctor came back to me and he said, "We've taken the X-ray," I said, "Yes, I know." And he says, "Nothing's broken there. It's all it is sprained really bad. So you're not going to Japan. You're not going home. You can go back to your outfit." Now I'm all the way down at the lower foot of Korea, and he discharged me. And I had to hitchhike my way back up to my unit. It was unbelievable.
Oh my gosh.
The
So
whole process from the time it started till I got back to my outfit was about 10 days.
wow. So 10 days there just completely with,
Unbelievable.
yeah, and thinking that you're gonna get back.
Yeah,
So
I'd be out on a dirt road hitchhiking, and a Jeep or a truck would stop and say, "Where are you going?" And I'd tell them what regiment and infantry outfit I'm going to. "Well, we're not going quite that far, but we'll get you up to here." So they would take me up to the next spot, and I'd get out, and I'm on a dirt road hitchhiking, and somebody would go and stop, and they'd say, "Where are you going?" I'd tell them, "Well, we're not going that, but we can get you a couple miles up the road." And then, yeah, stuff, unbelievable.
wow. I'm sure that if it wouldn't have gotten you court-martialed, you would have had some choice words for that doctor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But so anyway, it was about 10 days from start to finish, where I was on my way home to going back up to my outfit again.
Wow. No kidding. And
As many years ago as that is, there are just certain things about it over there that I remember, and that happens to be one of them.
sure, yeah, some stand out, some don't. But yeah, I imagine about if you just guessing about how long into your tour in Korea did that happen?
Oh, that was before the armistice, so I was probably there 5 or 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
because the armistice hadn't been signed yet.
right, not until July. And you mentioned a little bit about, just on the phone, that your regiment, for a period, served alongside the Turkish Brigade. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, they would, yeah, they farmed us out to be with the Turkish Brigade. And I remember meeting some of those guys in the Turkish Brigade, and they were badass. They all had beards and mustaches, and naturally they talked to it. Some of them could speak a little English, but and I told you about some of them had these little bags, little small bags they'd have tied to their belt, and they finally, one of them or a couple of them told me what was in the bags. They were ears. When they shoot or kill a North Korean, they cut his ears off in one ear and put it in the bag. And I guess that was their sign of masculinity, or they were tough dudes, and they were, but uh, I became friendly with a few of them, and I remember at night when we had nothing to do, if there was nothing going on, we'd sit around and they'd pull out the bottle of vodka and start passing the vodka around.
Wow. So yeah, kind of like you said with the Seagrams before, but now, yeah, just with a couple friends that you could kind of just communicate just enough, but they were friends nonetheless, right?
Yeah, yeah, and they're there for the same thing, and it was nice to have somebody like that at your back.
Hmm. And I understand that the regiment went into action with them. It was
Yes,
area Nevada complex. What do you remember about that?
not much, you know. No, I remember going on a lot of patrols, but I don't remember anything happening. We'd get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to meet. And we'd be off on a patrol someplace, and like I said, I was lucky. I never had anything bad happen.
Mhm. But you did get shot at.
If I was shot at, I don't remember it, or they missed.
Yeah,
You know,
true. Yeah. So, and do you remember where you were when the armistice was declared?
I think we were close to Panmunjom. We were in that area where the truce was signed.
Mhm. And how did you react to the news?
We were pleased. Yeah, yeah, because we'd heard for months that there was going to be a truce sign, but it never happened. And we just thought it was more BS being spread. But it finally did happen. That they formed the truce.
Mhm. Uh,
Took a while for it to get around. There were, even though the truce was signed, there were some guys killed and shot and so forth. Up the far reaches of places where the word hadn't got out to
right.
our guys or the enemy.
And of course, you told me about mentioned a little bit about that assignment that ended up keeping you over there a bit longer.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, did you at least, when you were setting up for entertainment, did you at least get to see any like USO shows or anything of that sort? Anything that was, at least a little bit of a
No, no, no.
no.
I was so disgusted that I wasn't able to go home when I should have been going home. That all I could think about was finding somebody I could train to do my job so I could go home.
Yeah, like get me out.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And I remember before you could go home, you had to do a test where they checked you for a VD. And I remember, and I hadn't screwed around or nothing. I was behaved myself. And I remember when I went to get my test, I failed, and it was because I was so nervous. They do a deal where you squeeze it down, and if something comes out the end of it, they figure you got it. And that's exactly what happened to me. And it was just because I was so nervous to, to come home. So I ended up having to stay there another 2 weeks.
oh my gosh, yeah,
Yeah.
up some other way. So now, a few years after leaving the army, because when were you discharged, if you recall?
19, tell you, I have I carry my card with me.
Hmm.
And the reason I carry my card with me is when I have to buy something at Home Depot, they give me a 10% discount.
Oh yeah, right. You served, so.
Show my card. I was discharged in December 30th, 1953.
Okay, yeah, just a couple months after the armistice. And does it say when you entered the service there?
February 27th, 1951.
Oh, actually, I mean, obviously different year, but February 27th is my birthday. So, huh.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, it is. But let's see. And a few years after leaving the Army, I know you founded Ed Pink Racing Engines in '58. What do you attribute to its longtime success?
Pardon, I didn't understand the question.
Oh, sorry. So you founded Ed Pink Racing Engines in '58. What do you attribute to its success for so long, for now over 60 years?
Uh, well, because I worked hard. Uh, and that's what I love doing. That was my passion. And I worked very hard at it. You know, when I got home from the service, I did a lot of things before I opened my. In fact, I first opened Ed Pink Racing Engines in 1959. So between that time, I worked in a lot of repair shops. I worked for a lot of good people. I worked for Eddie Meyer. I worked for Anson. I worked for Frank Barron. I worked for Lou Bainey again. You know, I worked for a lot of good people that I learned a lot from. And at the same token, I'm kind of learning what I like to do. And I opened up my own repair shop, and I didn't like it at all because I'm doing work for people that don't understand. You know, you drive your car in and you want a brake job or a tune-up. And you're trying to explain to them what your car needs. Most of them are trying to tell you, and they don't know. And then I had to deal with companies that would do a brake job for $20, or a tune-up for 1995 or something like that. And I just, that isn't the kind of work I wanted to do. So I worked in all these places over the years, and I finally narrowed it down. The thing that I liked doing was the machine work and building the engines. And that's what I finally funneled myself into doing, and that's what I did. And I worked very hard at it. I remember the first time I opened up my first real business, Ed Pink Racing Engines. I had no credit behind me, so I had to have deposits on the telephone and the electric meter, water meter, and so forth, those kind of things. And after the day I opened I had a wife and two kids. And the day that I opened the shop up, I had $34 to my name. So I didn't have the opportunity of not succeeding.
That was it.
Yeah.
And now, what impact, if any, do you think your Army service had on your later career in motorsports? If not in what you actually got to do, but maybe in terms of like teamwork?
Uh, I think the biggest thing that I got out of it, I learned how to endure in any condition. That was probably the biggest thing that I got.
Mhm. And looking back, after I guess almost 70 years now, I guess next year will be, 70 years since you were in Korea. What are your thoughts on the war and your service, just overall?
Uh, I never really thought about it. I think it was a very unnecessary war, just like the Vietnam War. Uh, I think a lot of guys got killed for nothing. Uh, like I said at the start, when we first started talking about it, most of those wars are political wars. They're started by politicians. And I don't know how you avoid it. You know, what they should do when there's something going on, there's going to be a war. They should have all the politicians go fight it.
Right. Change how, conflict always seems to happen.
I can, in the Korean War, one of the things I remember is at one time we got pushed back when we were almost kicked out of Korea, and because the North Koreans got the Chinese to help them. There was probably more Chinese soldiers over there than there were North Koreans. And I remember when things turned around and we started pushing them back, we pushed them back to the 38th parallel, which is what separates North Korea from South Korea. And General MacArthur was the general in charge at the time, and he wanted to keep going. And Harry Truman was the president, and he didn't want him to keep going. And he told Truman, if you don't keep going, you're going to fight this war all over again some other time. We need to keep going and push them to where we push them right out into the ocean. And Harry Truman called Douglas MacArthur back to the U.S. and fired him. And that they stopped it there. And now here we are.
Right. Here we are now.
Here we are today.
Well, I think that's a good, if sobering note to end on. It's it is a troubled legacy in Korea. But thanks so much, Mr. Pete, for talking with me today. I really, really appreciate it. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Okay. Did I get you what you need for this?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, let me. I'll just stop the recording here.